Hi everyone, it's Rebecca Robbins from ShaperSLP here for another Find It Out Friday. And no, I did not get a tattoo of a sleeve on my arm. This is a part of my costume for the play I will be performing in tonight. So just another tidbit about me that I do local theater very actively here over in Orange County, New York. But moving on, let's talk about what our topic is today for Find It Out Friday. So as you probably have heard, I'm hosting a live event next week teaching my hand cue system that I've used to teach nonverbal children how to talk in my own therapy room. And I wanted to take today as an opportunity to teach you a little bit about something that I will be covering in that workshop and something that is very important in the natural development of speech production in any child and how we use it to help children who are struggling to learn how to produce their speech sounds. And that is phonological processes. So that's something that I'm sure if you're not in the speech world, you're not a speech pathologist, is something that you probably haven't heard. But all of you have done these and all of your children have done these if they know how to talk. It is just a part of learning how to talk. So phonological processes are rules that govern how children start to learn how to organize speech sounds in their brain when they are learning how to talk. So they're actually rule-based patterned errors. So in typical speech development, we actually our children are expected to make errors in their speech. However, it happens in a very rule-based and patterned way. And it only becomes problematic or quote unquote disordered in a child's speech when these phonological processes continue to be present in a child's speech past the age of 3 years old. At 3 years old, they slowly start to fade away and the rules switch to the proper rule for speech production, and the children start to replace these errors with the correct sounds. So this might sound a little bit confusing. So let me just give you a concrete example of one example of a phonological process. So this is one that is very common, and it's also very commonly tends to persist longer than 3 years old for lots of kids. Even kids that this is their only difficulty with learning speech sound production, this one can be tricky, and it's called fronting. And this is when you take a sound that is typically supposed to be pronounced in the back of your mouth or further back in your mouth, and you replace it with a sound that is produced in the front of your mouth. Makes sense, right? We're fronting the sound. So the sounds that typically this occurs with are k, or g. So both of those sounds, I'm going to show you the cue for k. You just place it right here at the base of your throat. And g is 2 fingers, g, at the base of your throat. That's how I cue the k and g sound in my kids. So those 2 sounds are produced in the back of your mouth. Try it right now with me. G, g, g. You can feel it, right? Don't make me do this alone. You can do it. It's in the back of your mouth. That's called the velum back there. So these are called velar sounds. But what happens in the phonological process of fronting is that these sounds get replaced with what are called alveolar sounds, which if you take your tongue and start on your teeth and move it and right behind the teeth on the roof of your mouth, you'll feel a little ridge. That's called your alveolar ridge. So there's alveolar sounds that replace the velar sounds in the process of fronting. So k gets replaced with the alveolar sound t. So everybody make a T sound right now. T. You feel your tongue making contact with that spot right behind your upper teeth. T. So that means these are the kids that say tup instead of cup. Say tar instead of car, or say bat instead of back. So it can happen, and that's the other thing. It's any place that a k would show up in a word, that child is replacing it with a t sound. And that's what happens in these. That's why they're called rule-based and patterned, because it doesn't just happen in one word here and there. It happens, or in one word position. It happens anywhere there's a k. The kid will say a t if they're using the process of fronting, which 2-year-olds do all the time. But when it's past 2, then that's not something we want to see. When it's past 3 years old, that's not something we want to see in a child's speech. And with g, that gets replaced with d. So let me show you. The Q for g is g, and the Q for d is d. So let's say d. You can feel your tongue up in that same spot. And also, the reason why the Q's for k and g are basically the same, except one uses 1 finger and the other one uses 2, and t, d are the same, except t is 1 finger and d is 2, is because those 2 sounds, the only thing that makes them different is one uses the vocal folds, uses your voice, and the other one doesn't. Put your hands here on your throat and say t, 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 k, 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 k. There's no vibration there. Now say d, 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 g, g, g. You can feel the vibration. So that is the only difference between those 2 sounds. All the other features of those sounds are the same. The only thing that differentiates them is that one uses the voice and one doesn't. So the use of 1 versus 2 fingers is another feature of my hand cue system that I will be teaching next week in my live workshop. So just with k and t, any word that has the g sound is going to be replaced with the d sound. So instead of go, the child will say do. Instead of frog, the child might say fraud. So again, these are rules that help our children figure out how speech sounds work in typical development. And then once they turn 3, they start to fade out naturally on their own. However, we can use these phonological processes to our advantage as speech therapists when we are teaching a child who is learning how to produce speech. So I'm specifically teaching about kids that I'm teaching them how to talk sound by sound, starting with the vowel level and then introducing 1 consonant here, 1 consonant there, and slowly building. So a child might only be able to say 5 consonant sounds. So maybe they can say b, p, m, t, and d when they're talking. So what I will do so that they have the ability to say more words than just the ones that have those sounds is I'll use the rules of these phonological processes to cue them to say the word using that. So what does that mean? So if a child can only say the t sound and not the k sound, and I want them to be able to ask for a cup, I'll teach them to say tup. Because when infants or toddlers are learning to talk, that's the that's the version of cup that they're going to say first before they get to cup. So I'm going to use that same philosophy and that same strategy when I'm working with my older kids that might have some sort of diagnosis like apraxia or some other reason that they're having a hard time talking. I'm going to use that rationale to give them a different way to say a word so that they can start practicing saying a bigger vocabulary of words. So this is a little complex, but we're going to go over this in way more detail. And for some of the other phonological processes that there's several that exist in our speech. I'm going to go over it in more detail in the workshop that's live next week. So please join me. If you have a child that's struggling to learn how to talk, you'll want this information. If you know someone who has a child who's struggling to talk, please share this with them. I really, really would love to see as many people take advantage of this class as possible. And Not only are you going to get the live workshop, that you're also going to get access to a private Facebook group and access to me for 3 days after the event, where I'm going to be in there live doing some additional trainings and answering people's questions in real time. So please join me next week. I hope you found this Find It Out Friday helpful, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.